Look at a landscape like this. Deep wilderness camping promises absolute peace, zero crowds, and complete immersion in nature. In the summer of 2021, 5 friends headed into a remote Montana forest looking for exactly that kind of isolation. Instead, they walked into a masterclass on what happens when you ignore the warning signs of a hostile environment. Their first day went perfectly: fishing, setting up near the lake, sharing stories around the fire. Then, at midnight, the ambient noise of the forest completely stopped. There were no crickets, there was no wind, just dead silence, followed by sharp, coordinated whistles echoing through the trees. Whether you interpret what followed as a campfire ghost story or something else, the campers' response highlights a deadly serious issue. Their catastrophic failure to react to clear environmental threats directly mirrors the mistakes everyday backpackers make. This table illustrates the wilderness expectation gap, the difference between what we want from the backcountry and what it demands. The first row shows how true isolation means zero external help. You are in direct proximity to apex predators, entirely dependent on your own skills. We are going to strip away the supernatural elements of the Montana story to build a practical framework. You need to know how to identify critical backcountry red flags before you find yourself trapped. Choosing total privacy means assuming 100% liability for your own survival. You have to trade passive relaxation for active, exhausting situational awareness. Healthy forests have an ambient baseline. There is a continuous, predictable hum of wind, insect activity, and wildlife that tells you the ecosystem is functioning normally. When the Montana forest went dead silent at midnight, that baseline dropped to 0. Shortly after, the campers heard heavy footsteps circling their tents and sharp whistles coordinating in the dark. This checklist is our backcountry threat assessment. It translates vague, spooky sounds into actionable data. The first row deals with acoustic anomalies, like sudden silence or heavy footsteps. The probable cause for this indicator is the sudden proximity of an apex predator, like a bear or cougar, or a hostile human monitoring your camp. The required action here is immediate illumination and deterrence. Implementing that action requires specific preparation. You need high-lumen flashlights and bear spray staged directly beside your sleeping bag, ready for instant deployment the second you hear an anomaly. Carrying that heavy defensive gear and staying awake to actively monitor the tree line drains your physical energy. It completely ruins the relaxing vacation vibe you went out there to enjoy. Actively monitoring an environment's baseline sounds exhausting, and it will likely induce paranoia if you are a beginner, but it remains your only reliable early warning system against an ambush in the dark. The morning after the whistles, the Montana campers found dozens of massive bear footprints, forming a complete circle around their tents. Something had physically breached their immediate safety zone. Despite feeling deeply uneasy and knowing a massive presence had circled them all night, they chose to stay a second night, simply because it was more convenient than packing up.
To avoid that mistake, you must implement a 50-yard dawn perimeter sweep. This is a daily, non-negotiable protocol to check for fresh tracks. Looking at the second row of our threat assessment, we log the physical evidence of unidentified tracks and perimeter breaches. Finding fresh tracks means your camp sits inside a hunting corridor or is actively being monitored. The required action is a zero-tolerance relocation policy. Following this rule forces a massive physical trade-off. You have to break camp early, expend heavy calories hauling out, and scrap your entire planned itinerary. In the backcountry, prioritizing convenience over safety is a fatal flaw. When you find evidence that your perimeter has been breached, you must expend the exhausting physical effort required to separate yourself from the localized threat. Later that afternoon, the group stumbled onto a completely abandoned campsite.
Untouched sleeping bags were still in the tents, food sat on tables, and a discarded camera showed a terrifying final photo of a pale, 8-foot figure standing behind the previous occupants. When hikers find abandoned gear, curiosity usually takes over. People want to investigate the mystery, totally failing to recognize the setup as a severe, immediate environmental warning. We log this on the third row of our assessment scorecard. The indicator is intact abandoned gear or a fully set-up camp with no people. The probable cause here is grim. Intact gear left behind usually indicates a recent animal attack, foul play, or a sudden severe environmental hazard that forced the owners into a panicked evacuation. Your response must be mechanical. Do not touch the gear, do not stick around, document the GPS coordinates, and get out of the area to notify authorities. Reacting properly to this specific anomaly means you have to completely abandon your exploration. Your recreational trip is instantly over. Intact abandoned gear is never a harmless curiosity. It marks a live hazard zone, demanding you sacrifice your vacation plans to preserve your life. The Montana campers waited until they saw massive footprints and heard a voice mimicking their friend in the dark before they finally left. The definitive lesson here is that waiting for visual confirmation of a threat is often too late. Your intuition is a survival tool. This is the evacuation matrix, formalizing your survival logic. First branch. If an encroaching mass circling your camp isn't deterred by noise or light, you break camp and evacuate. Second branch. Finding undeniable human foul play or abandoned gear also leads straight to evacuation. If you are a beginner, look at what this matrix asks of you. If the thought of packing up your tent in pitch darkness at 3 in the morning to hike out terrifies you, you need to stick to managed campsites with park rangers. For the backcountry explorer, securing true isolation requires ruthless pragmatism. You have to be willing to react instantly to shifts in the environment, no matter the time of night or the weather. Nature does not care about your itinerary or your desire to relax. Surviving the deep woods means prioritizing rigid, uncomfortable safety protocols over the illusion of peace.